Welcome back to the Manor. Julian McBain here, and we are back on the road for migration. So, got an interesting topic in my opinion for tonight, but before we get started, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the Manor. Please take a moment and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. Also, please consider going to patreon.com/JulianMcBain if you want to support my work. If you do, you'll get exclusive content. For the month of July, we had my reading and commentary on Miles and the Night. I have not quite decided what August is going to bring, but I guarantee it'll be interesting. So, at least I think it'll be interesting. So if you're interested in that content, then please go over to patreon.com. Thank you for your support. So, I had a very interesting conversation, and I find that thought-provoking conversation is important, right? So you can have conversations. Sometimes they're fun, like when you talk about Star Trek or when you're talking about EU. Sometimes they're more, less meaningful. Sometimes they're hobby based. So like if you're into Legos or if you're into Warhammer 40K, if you're into firearms or fencing, or if you're into computer games, they're topical. And sometimes they get thought provoking, but more often than not, they're topical. So, but one of my favorite things is talking about philosophy, right? I'm sure my longtime viewers will know how much I love talking about philosophy. I've actually kind of wandered away from it for a while, but I think it's time to wander back, And I was having a conversation this past Sunday, and we were talking about flaws and bearing our burdens. And I was thinking about it, and I think that when it comes to the human condition, it is highly likely that a large percentage, and I won't say it's a majority, but let's say a plurality, of the causes of our suffering on a day-to-day basis are self-inflicted. And I mean that. And I don't necessarily mean it's intentional, although that surely happens too. If you neglect yourself long enough, you're going to have problems. But I think that a lot of it's self-inflicted. And I think it's self-inflicted because we often don't do the things that we need to do to have success for ourselves and to have a good life. And I'm not talking about, becoming Grant Cardone or, Bill Gates successful, right? I mean, a very, very small percentage of people are going to be that successful. But what I mean is having a day that goes well for you, okay? Having a week that goes well for you, where you accomplish the goals that you laid out for yourself for the week or the month, and you are satisfied with the outcome of that particular period of time without having to reduce the goals you really wanted to accomplish for it. And oftentimes we do it to ourselves. Because we'll be like, well, I want to, let me try to come up with an easy to relate to one. So as a content creator, I have a goal of producing 4 pieces of content a week. 2 videos, 2 live streams. With very limited exception, I have accomplished that for over a year. Last week, I had to miss the live stream because I had no internet. Not much I can do about that. That situation was outside of my control. Okay, fine, fair enough. But I've been posting videos regularly. I produce the content I set out to produce. And it was, asked of me a couple times recently why I stopped doing the McBain Moments segments. And largely speaking, it's because I thought they had run their course. It's because I no longer felt that they were accomplishing what I had set out to accomplish. And I couldn't figure out how to make it do so. So I decided that period of my life was now time to move on. And I do miss doing a lot of the McBain Moments stuff. I really like talking about the meaning behind quotes and what we can extract from quotes. I think that's good. These are good things to talk about. And since part of my job, I do digital marketing as part of my job for my 9 to 5, is every day the agency I work for posts a quote. And I'm the one who sources the quote. And a lot of them are very thought-provoking. And so it gets to be, how can we set ourselves up to accomplish what it is we want to accomplish in a day, in a week, in a month? How do we overcome those flaws? Because to quote 12 Rules for Life, you're a terrible employee, but you're a much worse boss. Oh, that's a paraphrase. You have to set yourself up so that you have a goal, and the goal has to be accomplishable. And maybe that doesn't mean the goal is easy, although day-to-day goals should be relatively easy. Maybe your goal for the day is to make your bed and to do the dishes and to do the laundry, right? Well, what are you going to give yourself for doing these things? And whatever you decide your reward for accomplishing the goal is, you have to make sure you go out and get the damn reward when you're done. And this is one of the messages from that book, is that you have to follow through with yourself if you're going to be successful in building the life you really want to live. And guess what? It's not easy to do that. We are flawed beings. We are going to make mistakes. We make mistakes every single day. And I mean, I myself make plenty of mistakes, because I promise myself most days that all of my labors will be done by 8 o'clock p.m. except for on the nights that I live stream, which, let's be facing it, doing these videos and live streaming is a lot of fun. So it's not so much labor, although there is labor involved in it. I would be lying if I said that this wasn't work. It certainly is. But it's an enjoyable work. Just like when I go to lodge, because I'm a Freemason. We do labor at the lodge, not the type of labor you might be thinking. It's a lot of thinking, thought-provoking, philosophical stuff, education, but there's still labor involved. You have to know the ritual. You have to learn the lines. You have to be able to do things in the right order. No, none of this is of the secrets. So there is labor involved, and there's labor between lodge communications, where I have to do things like memorize the lines. And by the way, it's not just some book that you can find in a library, kids. The lines are all coded. That's right. The reason that no one's figured out all the secret ritual of Freemasonry, even though I'm sure you can find a good chunk of it online now, is because if you pick up a Freemason's book, we call it the Monitor, or the Ritual book, it's all in a cipher. And if you don't know how the cipher works, you're never going to figure it out. That was the most incredible discovery I had. So yeah, it's labor, but it's a labor of love. It's a labor you enjoy doing. But I set a goal for myself, and I try to make it so all my labors for the day are completed by 8 p.m. And more often than not, I succeed in doing that. Now, sometimes I just can't get into the relaxing phase, and I want to work on something that's kind of a pet project. And if getting the chance to work on a pet project or a hobby is part of the reward, I can accept that. Like, sometimes I'll jump into EU and I'll put Star Trek on the computer or an anime. And I'm not recording or anything, so it's really just me chilling out. And yes, it involves my video making in the long run, because my avatar is directly linked to the content I create. And the more I level up the avatar, the higher level of mobs I'll be able to fight while I'm creating the content. But it's kind of more adjacent to it rather than being direct labor. Similarly, I've started editing my first, re-editing my first novel, the one that I published and pulled from shelves, Ghosts of the Past. I'm slowly going through it word for word and putting the final polish on. I'm finally going to do that, and that's definitely a pet project. More often than not, it's after 8 o'clock when I work on that, but it's not something I'm trying to push through. There's no set time limit on that. And so that's where I think the difference lies. To me, that's not a regular labor. It's the stuff that's the routine stuff, the stuff I need to get done that I try to have completed by 8 o'clock. And I think that it's very important that we all have a goal. And now for you, maybe it's not 8 p.m. I mean, me, I told you in my last video, I have a hard time not doing work. Like me just sitting and relaxing and chilling, not something I'm very good at. And if it's before 10 o'clock, it's very likely I'll find something to do. By 10 p.m., my brain has finally worked itself out enough to where I can just sit, relax, and watch a show. Most times before that, forget it. Forget it. Not going to happen. Sorry, lost my train of thought. Got distracted for a second there. That's okay. So what do you do? And for every one of us, it's going to be a little different. I'm not necessarily a high performance person because I don't operate at the level to be considered a high performance individual. You know, most of your high performance individuals, they work jobs that are extremely high value, and they just go and go and go, and they're pulling in hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, right? I don't do nearly that. I do a lot of work, and so from strictly from an effort perspective, I could be considered high performance. But really, it's a matter of I have to keep going. I have to chug. And that's just the way I am. And I've been like that for a very long time. And even when the only time that wasn't the case is when I lived in the city, and I don't know how I managed it. Like within a month and a half of coming back to the country, I was just like, okay, let's go, let's chug. And I know that before, when I worked in grocery, and this is probably where it came from. When I worked in grocery, 60 hours a week was a good week. Occasionally, I got 50 hours a week, and that felt like I was on vacation. 70 hours was the norm, and sometimes I crossed 70 hours. Because there were weeks it was 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's literally half a week's worth of hours. That's 84 hours. I have seen weeks like that. It is exhausting, grueling, grinding work. But once you're used to a schedule that does that, once your body comes down from just the pure exhaustion of it, it tries to find an equilibrium that it couldn't find in that position. Oh, didn't even realize I hadn't unlocked that challenge. Hear you. Cool. Flying creature known to swoop down and attack humans from above. Smaller than its Aetherix relative, this creature is therefore less easy to discern against the skyline. That's fair. At least it's not a hoglow. These things are ugly. So okay, if you're going to overcome these flaws, if you're going to make it so that you can have a good day and build a good life for yourself, what do you do? And the answer is that it depends. It depends on your personality. What drives you? What is it that drives you to go to work every day? And I'm not talking about the typical nihilist millennial, and I say this as a millennial. I say this as a millennial who's surrounded by millennials who are like this. Who are like, well, I work because I need to keep a roof over my head and just stave off the meaningless of existence. And that's an awful philosophy. If that's the only reason you go to work, you need to look in the mirror and reevaluate your life. Okay? Because there is meaning in the work that you do. And if you don't think there's meaning, you can build meaning into it. You know, maybe you're building up a savings in order to buy a house for yourself. Or maybe you are paying down debt so that you can do more things. Maybe you want to go on a trip to Ireland once this whole perma lockdown thing finally goes away, if it ever does. Maybe you're building yourself into something. Maybe you want to go back to school. Maybe you want to learn how to forge knives. Find something that you want to do, to give the labor that you do, to give the life that you lead, to give meaning to the suffering that you suffer from. Because we all suffer. It's only a matter of what degree and in what way. And that's a harsh lesson to learn. That's a really harsh lesson to learn. We are all subject to suffering. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of how much. It's a matter of when, it's a matter of how. But you know what? If you understand it and really grapple with that, really accept that to be the case, and understand that it's your own responsibility to shoulder that, then you can make your life a little better. And if you make your life a little better, it's going to help make the lives of those around you a little better. Because and I've used this allegory before, and I've rambled on this before, and I know it. So I know I've probably lost half of you already going, oh God, Julian's rambling about this shit again. But if I'm building a house, or maybe I have a house, but the house is falling apart because I've just, neglected it for 20 years, right? And the neighbor has a house, and the neighbor has a house, and he's been neglecting it for 20 years, and so it's falling apart. And the neighbor across the street has a house, and they've been neglecting it, so it's falling apart. And so everyone in the neighborhood of, like, say, 100 families, the houses are just falling apart because none of us want to put the effort forth. And then one day, you get fed up, and you're like, you know what? I'm done. I'm tired of living like this. Maybe I can clean the kitchen because I'm tired of all these flies in the kitchen. And so you do, and you wash the dishes, and you clean the counters, and then you realize, these counters aren't really serviceable anymore. I've got to deal with them for now, and that's unfortunate, but that's life, and I've let this happen, so I did it to myself. But you go, okay, well, I work a job, and I'm able to put $25 a week away. And so you save up all the money, and you finally save up $500, and you buy new countertops. And yes, I know in the current materials, just work with me here, okay? These are not accurate numbers. I'm just throwing them out there for the example. And so you buy the new cabinet, the new countertops, and so you go to and you put the new countertops, and you're like, well, I can't really afford to redo to rebuild the cupboards, but they're not in terrible shape because cupboards are pretty resilient. But they could use a good paint job. And I've got a little bit of extra, so you buy a little bit of paint, and it doesn't have to be an expensive paint. You go to like Walmart and pick up Kills or something like that, and so you buy the paint and you bring it home and you paint the cabinets, so they look refreshed. And you've got this new countertop, and so it's a start, right? And the stove's made of like metal and porcelain and stuff, so it's easy to clean. You don't have to worry about like grime getting permanently in there. But you look at the stove and you're like, the stove isn't in terrific shape, and maybe it's a gas stove or even an electric range, and you're like, you know what, I could spend a little and work on this. So you save up for a couple weeks, and you go and you get a really good kitchen cleaner, and you clean the stove top to bottom. Maybe you spend a whole weekend on it, just scrubbing your elbow grease to the max, scrubbing at the stove, and you clean your stove. And so over the course of like a month, you get the whole kitchen exactly the way you want it. So now your food, it tastes better because you're cleaning it. You're using a clean kitchen to prepare it. And maybe because of that, you're not getting sick, because dirty, nasty kitchens will make you sick. And so you're like, okay, this is better. I feel a little bit better. And I walk into a kitchen and it's not disgusting. Okay, good, awesome. So then you turn to your dining room, and this is where you eat. And you're like, well, it kind of defeats the purpose to have a clean kitchen if the dining room's not in great shape too. And you look at things and you're like, well, the table and chairs are in okay shape, but they've been here since the 1980s, and I could use a refresh. And so you think about it and you go, you know what? Let's see what the thrift store has. And you go down to the local thrift store, whatever it is, and you find an old table and chairs, but they're in good shape and they're clean because the store uses really good cleaners to clean them. And so maybe you donate your old ones because, someone can definitely use it and they're going to clean it up. And then you take the new one, you put the new table and chairs in, and you look at the floors and you're like, it's time to mop the floors, and you mop your floors up. Now you've got room 2. And there's no difference between doing this, and you do each room in turn, and then you go to the outside. And you look at the outside and you're like, this house hasn't been painted in 15 years. And so you buy paint and you paint your house. And people notice this. And maybe some of the neighbors come over to chat with you and they notice that your kitchen is really clean now. And that you have this new, used, but serviceable kitchen table. And maybe instead of using an old van bench as a couch, you actually pick up a couch. And they're like, you know what? He seems a little happier. Or she seems a little happier. Maybe I should do this. And so they go back and they look at their house that they've trashed over 20 years. And they go, this is awful. Let's start with my kitchen. And they do that. And eventually over time, and it might take, depending on how bad things have gotten, it might take a whole 20 years. But over time, everyone in the neighborhood builds things back up. And yeah, occasionally you're going to get that one asshole in the corner who doesn't want to do any of it and poo-poos you for putting the effort forth and isn't going to be tied down to build themselves back up. But overall, the whole neighborhood does better and everyone leads a happier life. And maybe people are talking to each other again instead of just keeping their eyes straight forward in blinders and not dealing with each other. Maybe recapturing just a little bit of that picturesque Pleasantville-like fever dream that we all thought the 50s were like. And of course that never actually existed, but that's the purpose of ideals, is to come up with a thought. That's a goal. The ultimate goal is never supposed to be achievable. But if you keep striving for it and make life just incrementally better, make yourself incrementally better. And this, again, this allegory... Oh, thanks, dude. I really wanted you to spawn between me and the guy I was actively swinging a sword at. We can really do that. And maybe for you, rebuilding the house that is your life, and I mean this, I love using building metaphors probably because I'm a Freemason, but I love using building metaphors because it's really easy to kind of parse and draw out and extrapolate ideas from. If you rebuild your house and then your spouse will rebuild their house and make it really nice because they live next door to you, and then your kids who live in your backyard, they rebuild their little play houses, which will eventually grow into real houses because this is life and not this is a metaphor for life and not an actual yard, right? And then it'll extrapolate. Maybe their friends see what they're doing and they try to do a few things and their parents watch them do it. And they're like, I'm being a terrible example to my kids who are being a better example to me than I am to them. And they start putting themselves back together. Maybe we can all create a better world by focusing and doing the necessary things we need to in order to build ourselves up. And I know that there's been a lot of attempts at a social level to kind of do it society-wide. And you can call it a number of things. Social engineering it has a really bad rap, but that's basically what it is social engineering. To try and goad or even to cajole or in a lot of ways manipulate people into doing things differently to better society as a whole. But I think all of these programs miss the point, because society is made up of individuals, and you can't better the whole without fixing the individual units therein. And so I think that the focus has been wrong, which is why it has failed so badly. And this is why things are so rough right now. I mean, COVID aside, of course, this was happening long before the Rona came. And there are a number of things you can do. I spoke in my last, was it my last video or the one before? The one before that, about civic organizations. A lot of this was accomplished by joining civic organizations, by being involved with your neighbors. holding each other accountable. And I mean, is there a perfect solution? No. And maybe I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I think I do. I've done a lot of study. I've done a lot of work in this sphere. Numerous sources. Some of them modern, some of them ancient. From human psychology to philosophy. You know, from the works of Rene Descartes. Or Rene Descartes. I don't know how to pronounce his first name, but from Descartes to Sun Tzu, to Lao Tzu, Machiavelli even, which I know you can really give cock and eyebrow on Machiavelli, but there are important lessons to be learned in The Prince, even if it means these are the things you want to avoid. Peterson. And that's avoiding the religious texts, of which I have read good chunks of the major ones. I've read the Bible, I've read the Quran, I've read the Book of Mormon. Avoid the Book of Alma, it's kind of dry. And all of them have wisdom in them. All of them have wisdom in them. You may not agree with everything in them, and I would venture a guess that it is proper that you don't agree with some of the stuff in each of those books. And I'm not just talking about the religious ones, I'm talking non-religious ones too. If you read something or watch something or listen to someone and you 100% agree with every single thing they say, you should probably review and this includes me. This absolutely includes me. If you hear yourself listening to me and agreeing with every single thing I say, for the love of God, please go read more books. So, okay. I think I've ranted at you enough. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe down below. We're on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. And as always, I really appreciate the support. Huge shout out to my patrons, Red Crypto Knight, Jay Lambertson, Devin327. I really appreciate it, and we will see you in the next one.